What's up, everybody? Welcome to the open tending call of the broom. I think this is the third open tending call. It is the 29th of February in Perth, Australia, which I think means it's also the 29th of February, as far back as the international dateline goes, more or less, unless you're like in the far Solomon Islands or something like that. Like international Micronesia, maybe. Anyway, happy Leap Day. And yeah, just as a reminder, if you've never like listened into one of these calls before, first of all, there are a bunch of people who look after the garden that we call the broom, even though it may seem like a little bit of a pirate ship sometimes. There are people who are in charge, and we call these people tenders and gardeners. And we meet weekly. And a little while ago, we decided, in the spirit of open governance, as an experiment in transparency and little d democracy, to start making the last tending call of every month. So therefore, the last Thursday of every month, an open tending call, which anybody in the broom can attend. Anybody who is a member of the pot in the broom can type and unmute to speak in, and also that a meeting that is recorded so that people who are outside the broom or who are listening asynchronously can get a sense of how we are going about the building of this spiritual community. And also, I would say we have the opportunity to be held accountable for how we are building this community. And yeah, we'd love to have y'all in if you feel like it would be interesting to you, and if you show up in good faith. So, um, usually, even if we're not public, we start with check ins, or what we've been calling temperature checks. So, I guess I'll start it off, and I invite anybody to type or unmute or interrupt me if they would rather be the first person to do a temperature check. But I want to like try and keep it to about 10 minutes, which is funny because I feel like often when we're not in public, it takes us like an hour. But like nobody else wanted to facilitate, so I'm facilitating, and I'm gonna be like, like my tiger mom, monkey dad self. So my check-in is, well, Mercury, Saturn, Cazimi happened. I went through an intense phase of revisiting how I show up in public, and now I'm showing up in public on the other side of the Mercury, Saturn, Cazimi. And yeah, one of my friends showed me a reading from the Gene Keys that was talking about like the polarity of like, I want to say power, um, which like I would say like, yeah, in reactive mode can be a bit bullish, but also in repressed mode can be like self-effacing, and those are two extremities I'm very familiar with, and I've been moved to play with different textures. As far as like my temperature check for the broom goes, I would say it was very edifying for me to see y'all jump in and like take control of Roundup. I feel like the containers that have been happening in the Broom Radio this week are fucking lit. I've really enjoyed quoting and posting quotes from those containers over the past couple of weeks, because I feel like the stuff that comes out in these containers is like really, really good compared to a lot of the stuff I see online in general. And I feel like the conversations that have been happening are really spicy and really high quality and super regulated. And I'm really happy to be gardening in a community which holds space for conversations of those topics and also of those qualities. um, but how about y'all? I'm happy to read out anything that anybody types, and happy to shut the fuck up if anybody else wants to talk.
I'll check
We
in.
got 8 minutes.
I feel like tending in the broom um, is going really well for me.
Mm.
Um, it's funny because, let's see, a month ago when we had our last open tending meeting, I was in Dublin. Um, so that's like kind of interesting to like
Whoa.
uh, conceptualize time with that. And now I'm also not at home right now either. Uh,
Mm.
so that's interesting. I tend to like not be at home for open tending meetings,
Pun
I guess.
intended. There's so
um,
many layers. Anyway, go
um, in terms of temperature, oh my god, it's really fucking cold here. And it's like
on.
really shocking because yesterday it was like 54 degrees. And then now today it's like 24 degrees and like
Mm.
17-degree winds. And I was like, ugh, thinking about how
Um,
it makes sense that like people in the Northeast tend to have a reputation of like being a little bit cold in like an energetic sense.
mhm.
Because I'm like, yeah, like the cold does have this effect on the body that's just like, it really does kind of make you want to just like, ugh, clench.
Mhm. I think that's like -5 or -8 degrees Celsius for people who are not in the USA. It's cold.
Thank you.
Hmm.
But yeah, I feel like there's like a lot of really cool stuff going on in the broom right now.
100%.
Yeah, and I feel
Right.
excited about it. That's my
It
check-in.
says I woke up 10 minutes ago, so I'm still rubbing my brain cells together. Thanks for checking in. I think also, like, yeah, when you mentioned being away from home, it kind of got me thinking about tending in the wild. Like, we are talking about tending in the broom, but I also feel like tending in the wild is an interesting subject. It seems like it's pretty cold in North America.
Yeah, I'll check in. Yeah, it's pretty cold here. I like kind of walking outside, and when that first brisk wind hits you, just kind of like feeling into it and not like saying, "Oh, it's cold, it hurts," and just like feeling it, and that kind of like I don't know, it's kind of nice. But I yeah, attending and the containers like the past week, man, I feel like it's just especially potent, positively potent lately. And I've been having to do asynchronous more than I would like here recently. So I'm hoping to like maybe be able to more get more. I'm reading the chat. Hoping to be more synchronous if real life will go a little easy on me. But yeah, feeling good, and I think it's been a great week in the brain.
Ashe. I'm glad you're able to catch up asynchronously because we finally got to the. I mean, like it wasn't that long ago that we weren't recording anything. I feel like my wig just like shifted as I said that. I don't wear a wig. It's like a term of art. But yeah. Like it wasn't that long ago that we were recording like the welcome episode of the Broom Radio podcast. I feel like I was sitting right here.
I was sitting
But
right
yeah.
here too.
You were sitting right there in that place which isn't
Yeah,
your home? Yeah.
yeah, I was because that was in October. I think
Wow.
the last time I was here. Yeah,
So yeah, that's pretty fucking auspicious. I mean, if it helps for anybody to check in the remaining 4 minutes that I've allotted for checking in, I am like, I like to be tardy as well, but um, yeah, I think like using that as a reference point for like how far we've come since let's say October, I guess it was, is pretty interesting. It kind of been October because I think I was in Australia and I think I came back to Australia in November. But
I'm
anyway,
positive it was, and I'll
I
I
state.
don't,
I can check
I
in
don't
real quick. sneak in this little window and say like one thing I've been really noticing is like in my own inner work and my noticing with myself is like this process of finding a voice again or a new kind of voice. And I think that has been especially salient to me in the way that I show up as a tender, but also like in the Broom Radio, in the sort of content that gets these containers that also get recorded and shared. And I sense that there's a lot of that happening in the collective too. This sort of like finding unique individual expression voices while also finding this sort of collective voice. And I think it's really cool.
Interesting. I mean, for me, that is like what people talk about when they talk about like 5D New Earth is like literal throat chakra shit. Quota says, my throat chakra has been maturing. Julie says, my check-in is, I feel like I'm mid-thaw, and it feels good. As in, like, someone took you out of the freezer, and you're sitting on the counter, ready to be part of an incredible meal. Maybe body prepping for spring. Julie's in the kitchen sink. Defrosting. Anna says, I saw the first crocuses here the other day. I found out on a mountaintop in Bulgaria that I think crocuses are like heavily poisonous, right? I forget. There's two different flowers which look similar, and one of them's quite poisonous. And I was guided to eat it, and I thought I was gonna die, but I didn't feel like telling anybody, so it was just driving down the mountain, being like, "Oh, like this could be like how I go," but I didn't die. I did transmute. I did transmute a shit ton about thinking I was gonna die, so that was good. I don't recommend this to anybody.
I'm gonna look it up now.
Julie says someone's kid forgot to take me out until she pulled off at the driveway taps off. Yeah, I was very at peace with the possibility of dying. I'd just been on a mountaintop in Bulgaria, eating flowers. Pretty nice way to go. This mountaintop was also the place that a saint named Ivan Rilsky. The mountain is called Rila, so it's Rilsky. Oh yeah, prepped me for the plane situation where like a former member of parliament like almost busted out the top of the plane. Yeah, but this was where a famous hermit named Ivan Rilsky went to meditate for several years and then became one of those people that you see painted in church with like a big circle behind their head, which I think is like to signify enlightenment. Yeah, crocuses are highly toxic. Okay, everybody who's listening, crocuses are highly toxic. Look it up. Don't put it in your mouth. However, I will say that I think the flower I ate instead is not a crocus, but a forget-me-not or something like that. I need to look that up. But it was not toxic enough to kill me. Welcome to Open Tending Psychonaut. We are just doing, well, we're rounding out a temperature check because now we're 1 minute after I said we're going to stop doing temperature checks. I'm going to say for now that temperature checks are only for tenders because we're talking about how we're feeling about tending in the broom. But thank you for joining. Also, feel free not to stick around because you may very well find our model of open governance very boring. But that would be feedback to us. We can govern more entertainingly, perhaps, perhaps not. Does anybody else want to check in before I go to the task board? I'm trying to make it sound very exciting. But, while I'm waiting for people to check in, I'll say for a long time, we were keeping track of things that we wanted to do with the broom using pinned messages in Discord and Discord threads. And I was kind of hesitant to move towards a more fully fledged project management system for many different reasons. But thanks to Podrock and Podrock's research and all of the other tenders for indulging a more mature project management situation, we are now using project management in GitHub. This is not a paid advertisement, although if GitHub would like to sponsor the broom, I'm happy to talk about project management. But now we have all our shit in a GitHub project, thanks mostly to Podrock. And after temperature checks, I will be going to the task board to demonstrate how productive we are in the broom. Exciting government is dicey, says Psychonaut. I don't think he means in a good way. Thanks again, Pierre. Does anybody else want to check in before I move to the board? And y'all can like watch Podrock's stream apparently, because I think he's streaming what he's looking at. I'm not going to be looking at that stream, I don't think. I'm just going to assume that he's looking at the same tasks I'm looking at. And if he's not, I would love for y'all to tell me. Because I'm going to be trying to keep an eye on the chat and also speak proper English and also look at GitHub on my computer. There we go. Cool. So I'm going to cut off the temperature checks. Y'all can like find some sneaky way to squeeze temperature checks into talking about other tasks, but I may whip you. So, first of all, I'm looking at the new column because I want to like move things through what I would call like an informal triage process. And like, if y'all have ever seen a TV show called ER, it's kind of like that. Super cool. So I don't know if Podrock's looking at this, but the first task is called publishing number 3. And it is relating to creating a container called Please Disagree, where we can pin topics that we want to talk about. So I'm opening this up, and the first thing I'm seeing, which I already knew, but I'm just like being theatrical about this, is like Lexi assigned this to herself. And I know Lexi's been doing a lot of really good work on this. But since it's assigned, and since like it's being worked on right now, I'm going to be like, okay, if it wasn't being worked on, since Lexi assigned it to herself, I would say that it should be in the assigned column. But since it's actually being worked on, I'm going to move it into the work in progress column. And I'm not sure if that's showing up for you, Podrock. Please let me know. I'm going to look at the chat. Yeah, what it says, triage, like Grey told me, like in Grey's Anatomy. So like, we're just talking about doctors. Doctors are sexy. Triage is sexy. Let's keep triaging. George Clooney, I think people think he's sexy. He's a doctor, right? In ER. So hot right now. So since we've already triaged that task, I'm just going to move back into the triage column, which we may start calling the George Clooney column, but right now it's called a column called new. The OG McDreamy. So I created a task in here called look into social media publishers. And like, I was probably a little bit distracted when I typed that out, because I think like it would probably be better to be called look into social media publishing tools. But the reason I put this on there is because like one thing that we're doing now is like we're quoting a bunch of our containers and then using that to like quote the tweets or like the threads or whatever, the posts where we linked to the podcast episodes that we're producing painstakingly, so that we can drive more engagement and drive more people towards actually listening to those podcasts. And yeah, I'm using words like drive, which is not very spiritual, but whatever. Anyway, what I was kind of thinking is like instead of me or like anybody having to remember to go through and like quote those tweets, we could just like queue a bunch of them up and then schedule sending those out over the course of the week. So that's why I created this task. I'm speaking poor English. I'm not feeling called to assign this to myself, but I guess I'm kind of curious to hear from y'all if this is something that we should put into action, or should we put it on the backlog? And also, I'd love to hear from anybody if they want to look into this or if they have any questions about what the fuck I'm talking about.
I'll look into it.
That sounds like Anna. Yes.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is.
I see.
Yeah,
I'm
I'll look
like,
into it
yeah,
because I feel like it's aligned with what I've been working on.
cool. I'd love to hear more about that. So I'm assigning it to you. I feel like I should be able to move it into the assigned column. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So now I'm doing Podrock's job, which doesn't make me feel good, but I feel like Pod's probably okay with it. But this is
I
like
won't,
kind of what
I
I
won't
meant
fight you.
by like facilitating and uh taking notes at the same time. But you know, whatever.
I honestly
Okay.
kind of forgot about this when me and Hoda met earlier this week about like promotion, and now that I'm like,
Like the tool.
yeah, the tool to like queue up posts on.
Mm.
Do you think it's possible? Like, is this? Well, I know nothing about it. Do you think like there's a tool that would do like Threads, Twitter, and Mastodon, or do you think it would just be a Twitter thing?
I mean, I think like it's possible, but I don't think there are anymore right now because I think like Threads is pretty new and
Yeah,
Mastodon is kind of new. So it might be that
yeah.
there's like different tools for each of them.
Oh, yeah.
Which like would maybe kind of suck, but also maybe if we thought that like we got enough out of scheduling, it might be worth it anyway. But
Yeah, I think it would be because then I feel like it could free up our energy to like look towards doing sound clips for like Instagram
yeah, or
and
even just
maybe
like fucking
off.
around on the broom or whatever, just
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna move into a sign and then like move on, and then maybe if we want to talk more about it, we can come back to it because I want to finish triaging and be like super cool, like the doctors on ER and Grey's Anatomy. Um,
Okay.
cool. So there is a task called publishing number 6, and it's called "Why Are You Like This?" Or I should say, the identifier is number 6, and it's assigned to a repository called publishing. So it's publishing number 6. The actual title of the task is hashtag Why Are You Like This? We basically, well, I'll say that one of my friends from outside the broom who listens to the podcast from time to time was talking about how he, I will gender him, was listening, would like to listen to like a podcast about like how people got in a spiritual path, what their path has been like. I was thinking immediately that I'll probably be doing energy work with him. And like maybe this is like where Dojo would go. Maybe. I don't fucking know. I also said that like since he was suggesting he would listen to it, he should be the first volunteer, and he got kind of like grimacy. I'm talking about like his usage of the grimacing emoji. What is like publishing number 6, Chanel's newest flavor, or scent, I should say. But yeah, so like what do y'all think?
The first thing that comes up for me is like some conversations I feel like we've been having around the broom, and even in my check-in about this idea of like expression. And it feels like there's
Mm.
two different like real beautiful purposes of a space like this. One is to allow people to express out loud inner experiences. And I think that's really powerful in itself. And then there's also this piece about like refining and actually getting reflections, especially from spiritual practitioners who have maybe walked some of these things or done a lot of refinement themselves. Um, and like I'm just trying to think of like, are they maybe they're the same space or maybe there's some differentiating, but I just wanted to call out those two specific elements that feel related to this container idea. But I really think it's great.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've also had conversations about like talking to like people who in some ways are like less explicitly mystical, although I think recent missives from live concerts of like Andre 3000 sort of like call that into question. But I think we've talked about how like a lot of artists and musicians are kind of like either closetly spiritual or just like spiritual in non-explicit or non-doctrinal ways. And I feel like maybe like this kind of container would be a really good container for sort of teasing out some of those overlaps in ways which I think could be generative for cultural production, I want to say, but also generative for spiritual um, endeavors. Because I feel like maybe a lot of people feel like in order to be spiritual, you need to like talk to spirits or like have altars or wear robes or something like that. Whereas I feel like for me, I think like the field of spirituality could um, benefit from an understanding that just like living in alignment doesn't necessarily have to mean like becoming an ordained monk or something. I mean, Adam says, quote, demystifying the mystical, unquote. And I'm just thinking about Ludacris now. I don't know why. Is Ludacris a spiritual person? I don't know. But it says, to be spiritual, you need to be able to talk to people to me. Yes, 100%. Yes, Julie says, I think it would be cool to sprinkle in interviews of tenders and gardeners. You got this, Podrick? It's so rude to misname somebody, but I think we're just going with it. Lexi says, not that monks have that good of a practice anyway, in my opinion. LMOA. Yeah, I mean, I would like to talk to some monks, but I feel like I'd like to talk to more artists and like athletes and like librarians and stuff like that. Yeah, I think I was thinking about Ludacris because I was thinking about mystical, and they both have a K in their name where it's normally a C. Um, Makes sense. I'm kind of name dyslexic in that way. Oh, and parents. Yeah, that's a good idea. An intro episode on each tender would be cute. Yeah, I think that would be cute because I'm having like a little bit of a gag reflex in response to it. So I think it is cute. Anyway,
Like that's the funniest thing that you're like, ah, yes, I know what cuteness shows up in my body as a gag reflex.
I know my body. Okay. Um. So, does anybody want to assign this to themselves now, or should we put it on the backlog? I am kind of feeling like it would make sense to assign it and then maybe start to like put together a list of people and start reaching out to them just because I feel like scheduling this kind of stuff and like just I think like what Lexi's been doing is like starting to schedule like please disagree, like maybe we can start to like put together a schedule of people who want to talk to somebody and like talk about spirituality, and maybe we can start with tenders and gardeners.
I would I would love to see maybe a more like short term immediate action item of like maybe hosting a little bit of a small brainstorming around a couple people that are interested in
Well, that's
this
a good
and
idea.
spending time to just like tease it out just a little bit further and then diving into it.
So you're saying like potential guests just sort of like having like a bit of a powwow about what that might look like with somebody
I
who's going to interview them?
Yeah, maybe, but I also think like fleshing out kind of like the rough contours of what that flow might look like in a container like kind of like the agenda, like brainstorming around like how would that flow,
Mm-hmm.
if that's making
It
sense.
sounds This sounds like high production values, which I think is probably a good thing. Okay. Do you want to like organize that, Adam? It sounds like you have a good idea of what these brainstorms might look like, but I also know you're a busy person.
Yeah, no, I can. We try to make this work with the Google groups. Yeah, you can throw this on me to schedule a brainstorm and facilitate, for sure.
Sick. Alright. So I'm gonna assign it to you, and I'm gonna move it into the assigned column. I don't know if it actually moves it into the assigned column after I assign it, because I'm just gonna hit refresh and see, because it's in the OG McDreamy column. Okay, I refreshed, and now it's in the assigned column. That's good. Okay. Does anybody else want to say anything about that task, even though it's no longer in the triage column? There's one more task in the triage column. Somebody outside thinks they're super cool because they're revving. I'm sorry if you had to hear that. Yeah, going once, going twice, gone. I think that's how it works. All right. So the last is that cool, Podrock? How you doing?
Yeah. I'm getting them.
I'm just seeing these like I don't know what you call these. I'll call them chill bar emojis.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess if you have time to be like throwing out chill bar emojis, then you must be doing okay. Sweet.
My chill bar game's pretty quick though.
I feel like the thing I said was like such like a grade school passive aggressive teacher thing to do. It's like, oh, like I'm sure if you're eating chocolate bars in the back of the class, you brought enough to share, right? So anyway, thank you for taking notes. So the last task in the triage column is it's called Tending 113, and it says use ChatGPT to produce a weekly, I'm going to say text summary of the broom with links to conversations and so on. And I'm going to change that to say text. So just so y'all know, I'm not thinking of like getting like the voice of Dr. Stephen Hawking to talk about what's been happening in the broom for the past week. Does anybody, do y'all know what this is? And the broom this week. I'm not gonna. That's disrespectful. I mean, it's not just his voice, but he is like no longer with us. So anyway, Julie's got this tiger mom gift. Yes, I'm a tiger mom. I'd be insulted if you said that I wasn't. I haven't seen this one. This is great. She's great. She has very angular shoulder pads. I respect. So yeah, I guess like the way I kind of saw this going was like if there was just like a bot that somebody had produced for Discord, which just like reads Discord, and then it's just like in the last week these are the conversations, blah 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 blah, link, blah 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 blah, link, awesome, and then it could just spit that out in a channel that we call like this week in the broom or something like that. That would be really cool. I can't find the gifts of this lady anymore. Anyway, sorry, go on. Sorry, can you say it again?
I said, so like what Roundup is supposed to be, but ChatGPT generated?
Yeah, or like more specifically, like a text version. And I don't think it would necessarily replace Roundup because I think like Roundup is just kind of like a hang. And like sometimes it gets really vast and stuff, but I do think that like I would say like I would like read such a summary probably 85% of the time, and I would find it valuable. And then I feel like there are some people who would read it 100% of the time and find it valuable. Maybe some people who don't engage that much because it's a little bit crazy. And then, maybe one day like this could also be like a newsletter.
I was going to say it sounds like a newsletter, or it sounds like a step to a newsletter, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good note to add. Could also become a newsletter. I'm just going to put this in there. Maybe Pod's already got it, but I think that's okay.
Got it.
Okay, fine.
I actually think, to Anna's point about Roundup, I think it could be kind of fun to like try to time it so that that summary is available before Roundup, so that Roundup is sort of like a more conscious weaving and sort of refining of what the algorithm comes up with.
Adam's just like
language learning
trying to tell us that we need to get our shit together. But anyway, go on. I was like, wouldn't it be cool if like we had our shit together?
Well, it's just interesting too because like, well, I don't want to interrupt the triage flow.
I will allow a little bit more discussion because I think it might help us triage it.
Okay.
The patient's catatonic anyway, so we can just talk and like draw dicks on their face and shit. Go on.
I was just saying, it's just interesting, like now with if we're like reviving Please Disagree, I feel like that will factor into this too. Like that will influence the containment for me of Roundup. That is.
Yeah, it's interesting because I feel like some of the things that we tend to think we're going to talk about in Roundup, we've kind of like talked about doing Please Disagrees on as well, right? And then this might kind of like slide in to like where Roundup is, or like facilitate it in a way that meets Adam's standards. Psychonauts, about 75% along the way to volunteering to transcribe what happens in the Discord, I think. I don't know. No, to be serious, Psychonaut says, at which point it begs the question of why one isn't just transcribing. Are you talking about transcribing Roundup, Psychonaut? Or are you talking about transcribing or like summarizing the broom by hand?
He said, I would be cautious about using an LLM for regurgitating text because they aren't good at that and tend to swap out words they need more training on, maybe. Thus potentially misquoting people and changing context a lot.
Yeah. I have a lot of experience with this too, and I agree with you, Psychonaut, but when you talk about the raw amount of data that this thing's going to be looking over and summarizing, like, I think it could still be useful because it's just such a large amount of information. And we'll obviously probably be like editing it a little bit, and reading it before we publish it, I would think, to ensure safety.
That's very optimistic of you.
Good.
I think it's a nice idea. That's a great idea, actually. Let's do that. I also agree that Adam's saying I actually think it's funny to post as is. Yeah, I think that's true also. I mean, I think it's also like we can edit it. Like if somebody's like, yo, what the fuck? I did not say that. We can be like, oops, I'm sorry. Ha ha ha, technical difficulties. Because like we're using Discord. Discord's a fucking crazy ass app, to be honest. So like I feel like there's a little bit of a precedent for things being a little wonky. And then also like y'all know me, I'm like number one tech grump. So I just think like the internet's kind of broken already. And yeah, I think we can probably make it. It's probably worth making sure that we can edit. Yeah, I mean, like the worst case scenario, you can just copy it and then edit it and then paste it again. Yeah, LLM is hallucinating. I mean, are we all not just hallucinating this waking dream together? I think that like the way that there's a field of study called mechanical interpretation of like the geometrical relationships between the symbols, and I would say like within the neural networks that compose large language models. And it's pretty fascinating to me, like how much I feel like they're starting to resemble the way humans build thought forms. And I feel like we're probably going to learn a lot about thought forms via mechanical interpretation and fields of study of large language models and neural networks, which are yet to be named. Anyway, do we know enough about this task to triage the patient. Dr. McDreamy.
I think what might be interesting. Well, I guess there's two problems. I think one of the things I remember in the conversation was like the problem of scale, like how to get all this data. Because I remember I was like, oh, I guess you could copy and paste it, into a doc, and you were like, damn, that sounds like a lot of manual work, which it would be. But I do wonder if there's like maybe some manual work as a short-term intermediate step that just look at what it creates, just to like get some muscle around like what is this actually creating and producing, and see if that opens anything up as like a shorter term step.
Yeah, I mean, so like Podrock is like pasted in a link to a GitHub project which exports chat from Discord. So I think like maybe somebody could run that and then find a way to like ask either ChatGPT or maybe Claude, I don't know, to summarize it, and then sort of like there's going to be some prompting refinement. I know I'm just like trying to make sure Podrock is like really good at prompting AIs, but it's probably going to be some refinement to get to something which like looks good. That's like a pretty heavy lift though. I'm just like, I would probably put this on the backlog because there's a lot of stuff in the columns which I would say are like eastwards of the triage column, and I would love to like get through some of that stuff before we invite some of this stuff. But please disagree.
Feels aligned to put it on the back burner for me.
Yeah, having all that raw output, even from the tool, even if we could automate that, there's still going to be, like you said, the prompting, like putting it into Chat GPT, prompting for summaries and things like that. I've done summaries of books and stuff, and when you have a lot of data, it does a pretty good job, I feel like, of parsing that in like a readable, like maybe even a newsletter format. But yeah, it's still a lot of manual work, and I don't know if I think backlog is a good place for it, unless someone feels like they have that kind of time.
All right, I'm gonna move it to the backlog. Okay, we're done with triage. I'm gonna hit refresh because I guess like GitHub has a bug where it doesn't. It's like stuck in like the 90s when you didn't have like XML over HTTP, or what I want to say modern frameworks call reactivity or Ajax. I feel like I'm like dating myself right now. But anyway, it is possible to have me change the data or the status of one of these tasks and have the UI update. I don't know why it's not updating. But hitting refresh seems to work, in case you're wondering going forward. Are y'all ready to like work backwards from the review column? Or are we like kind of tired from triage? I'm gonna start. So I'll just say like because it's the first time we're doing this on an open tending call, and also I think we're still kind of settling into this. I created the review column because I want us to celebrate when we've completed things before we move them into the completed pile. That's the first reason. The second reason is because sometimes we move things into completion and they're not necessarily complete. And I feel like it's nice for us to like kill two birds with one stone, or like some less violent version of that metaphor. So I'm gonna look at the review column, and then basically like my goal, and I think this is like very aligned with like project management or productivity management or process management philosophy called Kanban, which is invented by a little company named Toyota that you might be familiar with. But basically, like the goal is to like get things done as quickly as possible, so you can learn from what you did as quickly as possible, and then the second, I'm not sure if this is like very true to their philosophy, but this is like what I remember from having learned this like 15 years ago, is that the more things which are currently like in process, the more that like they sort of like almost invisibly take away energy. Like even if you're not literally working on something, it's kind of like taking up space in like you could almost say like the working memory of your brain for something to be like figuratively in process. And I would say like this gets even worse if there is some discrepancy between like the articulated state of some work and like the actual state of that work, because then our brain is doing gymnastics to be like, okay, so like I know something is like I'm working on something, but I also know it's not saying that I'm working on it. So that takes up some space, like some mental mapping there. And then like if it says I'm working on it, even if I'm not literally working on it, it takes up some bandwidth. So like the goal of this philosophy, which is called Kanban, is to move things to completion as quickly as possible to free up working memory and to learn as much as we can from what we've done. So I'm looking at the review column, and the first thing there is the podcast upload schedule, which has been done for a while, and we've sort of refined it. I'm curious if anybody has anything to say about that before we move it to complete. I just want to say thank you for doing this, Anna. I think it's working really well. I appreciate you cracking the whip, so to speak, at the beginning of every week to make sure that people commit or like confirm what they're committed to, and then also like do the things that they're committed to. So I feel like in some ways, like the prototype, because everything's always a bit of a prototype, right? But the prototype is like done and it's working. So I think we can move it to complete. But then I'm kind of curious to hear if anybody has any thoughts on how that's going. Claudia says, I
It
feel like
doesn't
it's been helpful.
it doesn't feel done to me. Like
Okay.
it feels like there's more for me to do.
What do you feel like that is? I don't disagree, but I'd like to hear more.
Well, because yeah, and like me and Hoda have been working on it too. So thank you, Hoda, for helping me. But like yeah, we talked about like figuring out, well, we talked a little bit about like I guess being a little bit more specific, or like honing in on like what days, or like setting aside specific days to upload containers.
Mm-hmm.
Like, but I don't know. I'm not sure if that's something that like we are gonna want to do, or I don't know. There's things that are still a little bit unclear to me about it that I think would be smoother.
Mm-hmm. So I mean, there's a few different ways I could go, but like, first of all, I'd say like, would it make sense to like create other tasks for some of these things? So
Yes,
that,
definitely. That's been,
because like right now, I feel like they're kind of maybe just like swimming around.
yeah, that's been my thing with GitHub too, is like there are certain tasks where it's like it's not complete, it just like doesn't encompass the task. So,
Right.
you know.
Yeah, and I feel like task granularity is a difficult thing, and I don't really want to talk about subtasks and stuff right now. But I think, yeah, you know, like I don't want to also fucking dump my whole project management philosophy on y'all, because I've tried doing that before and it didn't work very well. But one
No,
of
but
the things is
it's
like
important
creating
because
tasks. Go on.
yeah, I was just gonna say like if the task, I feel like what you've already kind of like transmitted on the topic has been helpful for me, because I know you've talked about like if the task itself isn't congruent, like if the description isn't congruent with the actual task, then like that's taking up space too.
Right.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
And like I think in some organizations they'll say like tasks should be small enough so that like you can complete them in a day, which I think is a little bit like rigid. But I think like the basic idea is like, yeah, like you just want, it's like like if you think about a body, like it's easier for a body to stay healthy if things are flowing through it. It's like if you end up with a task which is just like stuck in one place for a long time, it gets stuck, right? And then also like everything else is just like we end up carrying around state in our heads. We can't like make progress. We get like a little bit down, like if somebody gets stuck in their room, they haven't been outside for a while, they get a little sloppy, so I think it's just like, I don't think we want to be at like Toyota levels of productivity, because I think a lot of people in Japan like kill themselves. But I also want us to be like happy, and I feel like stagnation doesn't keep people happy. So um do you want, should I create tasks for some of the things that you're thinking about changing about the way that we organize tasks regarding podcast uploads?
Yeah. I'm just not sure like what to change the task into.
I
I
wouldn't
think.
change it. I would just mark it as complete and then create new tasks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
So I'm just going to create one as an example. Well, actually, I'm just going to create a task and be like, create, this is super meta. You're going to hate me, but I'm just going to say create tasks for potential modifications to podcast upload schedule. Cool. And then I'm going to assign it to you. Is that cool, Anna?
Yeah, that's fine. That sounds good.
All right. And then I'm going to move it into the assign. Oh, we're going to convert to an issue first. And I'll make it in the publishing repository because it relates to publishing. And then I'm going to move it into the assigned column. And then I'm going to hit refresh because GitHub has a bug. And now it's there. Okay. So I don't know. I'll let you like add tasks for that, and then you can move that into work in progress when you're doing it. Because I don't really know like all the things you're thinking about. But one of the things that I've been kind of wondering about, which I'm gonna like pop into that task, is just like, I don't know, like depending on all of the things that you are thinking about changing, it might make more sense or might not make sense. But I've been kind of wondering if it would make sense to like move the podcast publishing stuff into GitHub as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just gonna put that as like a thing to potentially consider, and I'll make it a subtask because I like using Markdown. But consider whether it makes sense to use a project board for publishing.
I mean, I think it does. I just don't know where to start with it, I think is my thing.
Okay. Well, I'm
Yeah.
definitely down to discuss it with you because I feel like,
Okay.
like when we did the spreadsheet together the first time, it kind of felt like it's like a paradigm shift, right? To think
Yeah.
about like organizing data in a spreadsheet. And I feel like it's also a paradigm shift to think about changing data which is organized in a spreadsheet so that it's organized in a project board of this nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the kind of thing, it's like one of the few things that I enjoy from having studied computer science. So I'd be very happy to talk about that.
That would be helpful for me.
I can't say I know how it would work either, but I believe it's possible.
I feel like we could probably figure it out if we talked about it.
Yeah. And like, vaguely what I'm kind of considering is like, just like in the spreadsheet, we have a template and we copy that every single time because it has a lot of repeated tasks on it. We
Mm-hmm.
could probably do something similar for each, either like week or for like each container, maybe. I don't know, but it's like, and then you could just like copy at the beginning of the week and then move, I think it's kind of nice to like track tasks like this versus like having to fill out a spreadsheet, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
and I think it kind of like gets us into like a rhythm of using GitHub for project management. So.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to move the podcast upload schedule task, which is tending number 27, into completed. Yay! We complete things. We are a great team. Anybody have any objections? Don't piss on my bonfire, bro. Okay, cool. The next one in review is user surveys. And my sense of the status of this is that like we're kind of like I think like Julie's about to interview somebody. And until then we're kind of like waiting before we make any more progress on that. Is that accurate? Trying to see if I'm still connected to the internet.
Yeah.
That's
You
not a
are.
passive
No one's talking though.
That's not a passive aggressive way of saying like
Oh
I'm
no,
like
I'm feeling.
Marco,
Is anyone
you have
there?
to say polo. You have to
Is
say
anyone
polo.
home?
Marco.
For some reason, this reminded me because you brought up the school teacher archetype before. I was reminded of this teacher, this physics professor, or teacher. It was in high school, or maybe it was middle school. That used to, every once in a while, he'd ask a question, no one answered. He would just turn around and look at the wall and be like, "What's going on for you today, wall? How have you been? Oh, that's really interesting." He would just have like a whole conversation with the wall.
Had to be the physics teacher. Hey?
Yeah, they're always kooky.
That's
I
dad
reckon
to me.
it's definitely dad humor to me too. This one goes out to all the physics teachers. Thank you for pushing the Overton window in terms of how acceptable it is to be a crackpot and an adult. Julie says, I mean, intro surveys are a little separate from interviewing members already in the broom. Okay, just kind of tuning into that. I guess, like, Adam, you'd put together some surveys, right?
Wait, what is this task? User surveys? Oh, is this the questions that Adam came up with?
It's sort of like I did, but then it turned out that you all had already started doing something very similar. And so it was sort of like, oh, let's go back to what you guys had already started and maybe integrate some of these new questions I was proposing. But I think it turned out to be a thing you were already doing, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, like somebody was going to try and, like, combine powers like Captain Planet or something, right?
Well, yeah, I started looking at the Discord onboarding process, which is related, which I created an item for.
Could you say that last part again? I was just reading the chat. My brain stopped working.
Yeah, it's okay.
Sorry.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, then it feels like it overlaps with the item I created for the Discord onboarding process.
Oh.
But anyone feel free to disagree with me.
Well, I'm seeing that Julie said that she started to condense, but that's not finished. So, I don't know what's going to happen if I move this while Podrock's maybe typing in it. It should be fine, right? Maybe
Yeah,
Podrock's
you've done
not-
that with.
Okay, that's been happening. Nothing's been too
No,
crazy.
it doesn't. It doesn't break anything. It just.
That makes sense to me. So, like, that's another point on the board for GitHub. Good job, GitHub. Please sponsor us. Anyway, so it sounds like it could be. I think it's good that there's a different task for the Discord onboarding process because, I would say that's like there's a part of this which is like, okay, let's talk to people who are using the broom to see what works, what doesn't work, etc. In a sort of like informal manner, perhaps. And then there's a part of it which is like, okay, what do we want to know from people who are joining the broom who aren't existing members of the broom?
Oh, this was part of user research. Sorry.
Yeah. And then there's a part of it which is like, okay, like let's implement this and either make this part of the Discord onboarding process, or do we like change the form, the Google form that we send to people when they join, or
Yeah.
So I think
Mhm.
like, yeah, I think like it's good that the Discord onboarding process thing is separate. I think it's good that the user research task is separate. I feel like we could maybe split up the tasks a little bit more. So right now, this one's just called user surveys.
Yeah, it's
I think,
unclear to me what it is.
yeah, like it's a bit unclear to me what exactly it means.
Yeah.
But maybe it would be accurate for me to change the title to come up with or refine onboarding questions for new members.
Mm.
And then, yeah, that's assigned to Adam right now, but maybe it should be assigned to Julie. Is that correct? Or is Julie more working on questions for existing members? I'm kind of inclined to move this back into the as I'm saying, I had paused. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave this assigned to you, Adam, and then to be fair, I've changed the name of the task, so this is a little bit of like fuck shit. But I'm gonna move it back into like assigned because I don't think you're working on it right now. And then I'm gonna create a new task in I'm gonna say like the assigned column, and it's gonna be called come up with questions for existing and lapsed members of the broom, and also people who hate Nobu, like Agnes. And this could turn into a safety report, which would be great. I'm gonna assign this to Julie. Is this cool? I'm gonna convert it to an issue, and I'm gonna put it in the tending project because it seems like it's mostly about tending in the broom, and not necessarily the stick, unless you do talk to Agnew and he wants to file a safety report because I wrote a poem about Moo in Atlantis. Um, uh, I admit, I wrote a poem about Lemuria and Atlantis, and it contributed to a member of the broom leaving the broom. But I'm happy with that poem. I'm very happy with my conduct in that interaction. And if you're listening to this, please feel free to go to thebroom.us/safety. You'll find a link to a safety form and you can report me for crimes against literature and Agnew. So is this making sense? It says come up with questions for existing and lapsed members of the broom, and also people who hate Nobu. And I've assigned it to Julie. And I'm gonna say like one of the first things is just to like finish combining Adam's notes on questions for existing members. And then from there, I think technically, in order to create like a task list, which makes any sense, I have to put it in the description. So I'm going to move that. And then, like Julie, you can feel free to add subtasks there. Does that sound good? I'm going to read the chat now.
Julie said, I like that it's putting user research into more bite-sized pieces, to be honest.
Yes. Are there any more tasks that we want to create with regard to user research right now? Man, there's a lot of, I want to say, like, a lot of articulation and precision to the chill bar emoji lexicon. Okay. Cool. All right. Going back to the review column, and yeah, I'm gonna do a time check. Like, how are y'all feeling? We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes now. Probably like really about an hour and 5 minutes because we're kind of goofing around. I'm gonna try and do as much as we can before the hour. And if y'all feel like you need to tap out or like get a drink or go to the bathroom, then please, yeah, y'all know how to do that. I don't know how Hodeso is still working on my first cup of coffee. I drink coffee so fast. I'm very impressed. So the last task in social media strategy the last task in the review column is social media strategy. So I think like this kind of relates to probably like discussions that you've been having, Anna and Hoda.
Mhm.
Where I'd last left this. Can I continue speaking English for another 40 minutes? I don't know. Where I'd last left this is basically establishing like that there's like canonical episode tweets for each podcast episode, and then that we quote from those episodes, and then we quote tweet the canonical episode tweets from our personal accounts, and then we retweet them from the Broom Radio, and then we sign up for notifications for the Broom Radio on our personal accounts just to streamline the quote shilling unquote, or you could say like the teamwork that we do to inform the algorithm that we are indeed producing content which may be of value to witches who use social media. There is a piece on here, and I'll say that like I think that's like fairly well integrated right now. I can't say that I've been checking that we've been quoting and quote tweeting every fucking container, but I also can't say that I really like give enough fucks to be like really into that. But I think like there's a few of us who are doing this right now, and it feels pretty good. And people have said that they don't necessarily feel like oriented towards retweeting, but they like can like some of the posts, and I think that's been going well. So I'm feeling pretty good about that, and I think like the momentum there is good. The last part of like what I generated so far was just having people log on to like the official Broom Radio social media accounts and then just like engage with people as if like I don't know about replying, but just like engaging with people in ways that I think I don't want to put too many guardrails around because that's not really like the way I roll. So does anyone want to say anything about that? I think there's more, but I just want to like kind of.
I would say I think it's a really cool idea, but I also don't think I could sign up to do it because I think it's a really tricky thing to like kind of like that voice piece. Like when you're doing that, you're sort of like trying to tap into some kind of collective voice. So that's
Mm-hmm,
just a tricky thing I wanted to name.
Yeah,
mm-hmm,
I know what you're saying, Adam. I feel like um I don't think that well, I'll speak from my perspective. If I'm like on the Broom Radio account, I'm not going to try and like not sound like myself.
right. I
Like
think
I
that's
think it's
good to me.
yeah, like I think if like I can imagine this task being daunting if like we're approaching it like we have to like find a neutral collective Broom Radio unified voice. Um but I feel like if we each sign on to the Broom Radio and we just like engage from the Broom Radio in our own voices, then I feel
Mm-hmm,
like it could be cool.
mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to hear how other people feel about that.
I think that's cool. Does it feel too ridiculous to put like just like a little letter at the end or an initial or some kind of signifier to be like, yeah, this is me?
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
It seems like a pain in the ass to me, to be honest. It's kind of cute though.
Are you cringing?
He's gagging, actually, right?
It's a little bit. No, it's less of like a gag. It's a little bit. It's more of like a tee hee hee, like to sir with love type thing.
Yeah, Adam, like I totally get where you're coming from on that. I guess when I look at like social media strategy, like I reference like other organizations that have like a, an intern running their Twitter account and like that are successful, have like six-figure followers, and I've never seen that initial thing happen on that type of layer. But I'm not saying we shouldn't do it. It's just not something I see out there. That's
I would say like if you want to do it, I think that would be cute.
like
But I'm not gonna do it. I'm definitely not gonna be like, you know, whatever the fuck my initials are. NHC. What fucking weird set of initials that would be.
And
HE.
EXO Gossip Girl.
I think like that would be fine though. I mean, like, I think if you feel like doing it, it would be cool. The pants emoji. I mean, like Lexi's got the little chicken thing. I think that would be cool. I could see that working.
I mean, like, no, but to be fair, you kind of already have a signature.
Yeah, it's a fucking apostrophe.
Yeah.
It's a quick one, but it's powerful though.
I know, but that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's funny because it's irrelevant to Nobu because he already has one.
Yeah.
Wow.
Julie.
Yeah, it's very understated, isn't it? Anyway, I mean, if that's the only, like, personally, like, yeah, I don't know. I think like it could be time consuming. But I also feel like it might be fine if like maybe we, yeah, like maybe if we just came up with a schedule or something, and like we had like at least one person on each account for like half an hour a day, that would be cool.
Yeah, I was curious if we wanted to do like an hour total across all platforms or like an hour for each platform because that's 3 hours.
Yeah, nah, that's a lot. I mean,
That's
like,
kind of a
I would
lot.
say, I know, I probably wouldn't want to do. I fucking hate doing the same thing across different platforms. Like, to me, that feels like toil.
Yeah, it does.
Whereas, like, if it was just like, yeah, like on the calendar, it says I'm gonna be on Mastodon for half an hour. It's like, yeah, like, fine, like, give me an excuse to jerk off on social media for half an hour. And then, like, maybe like another day, I'm on like Threads for half an hour, you know? But like on the same day, it would feel kind of just like too robotic, which for me feels like effort. Although I know some people do like to do um, things kind of robotically across different platforms at the same time, you know. Julie says, I
Hoda, do
feel
you
like
want to
it's
say
time
more?
people get who's who. Yes. Adam says, honestly, I'm finding myself spending less time on Twitter and more on Discord anyway, so it's like I'm not sure when I'll find the time to do it. Maybe signing up for like one day a week for like, yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking. And I think it's also, I'm also in the same boat, Adam, where it's like, you know, I've posted publicly about how I feel like the best conversations I'm having tend to be on Discord in the broom right now. Actually, I don't use any other fucking Discord, but I feel like this is almost a way to like, you know what's kind of cool about it is like the broom's timeline is very different from my personal account's timeline. And I think that's kind of fresh to me. Intrepid Buddy says, or Hoda says promo roll. Do you want to say more about that? Oh yeah, Anna asked the same thing.
Yeah, one of the things that Anna and I talked about when we met this week was the possibility, and then I mean, we've kind of been talking about it in the room, adjacently, is the possibility of breaking down the publisher role, keeping the publisher
Mm,
role, and adding in the role of promotion and adding in the role, what was the other one? It's three P's. Hold on, I have
I
it
have
written
it
down.
here. Production, publisher, and promo.
Yes.
mm,
Um, and that way it would be, I think, a little bit easier. I imagine it, especially as we're talking about like spending a little bit of time on the Broom Radio accounts and
mm,
like engaging. I imagine that being something, and we don't have to get into the role breakdown right now, but I'm
mm,
hoping that if that gets implemented, if that's something we want to do, which is like have more roles to like break down this social media strategy. Um, yeah, I can imagine it being easier where we don't have to like fumble around to figure out who's going to spend like how much time on what platform. But it could be
mm,
more like what you said, Nobu, like things on the schedule. Um,
mm, mm.
so yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But so
Um,
that's sorry.
yeah, I guess like go on.
I was gonna say it's still in process. None of this has been implemented. I still need to make a GitHub task for it. So, or no, there is one called org design. So I'll update
Mm,
that after
okay,
this.
okay. I guess like what I was kind of thinking is like I don't want to try and create some more tasks now, but I think like I think like yeah, uh maybe we can break this up a little bit. Um and it's assigned to me. I think like the other things that I'm kind of interested in is like okay, so like I think it makes sense to have a task for like coming up with a schedule where we kind of hop on the official accounts. Um and then I think it makes sense like there's like some more stuff around social media strategy which I think like we don't really do anything on Instagram right now. We don't do anything with like stories. Like we're not posting threads to stories on the Broom Radio. um there's like particularities to posting stories so that other people can post their stories on their personal accounts. um there's like kind of a longer term thing around making like sound bites which can go on TikTok and Instagram. Like there's a lot to this task.
Yeah.
So what I'm kind of thinking is I think it would be premature to like write out all these different tasks, but I think like I want to kind of like sit down and sort of do what I did with like the existing write up and then continue to write that out for like other platforms and then also to like get it like right now it's like I think the level of detail that we have for like how we go from like posting a podcast episode to quoting it to quote tweeting and blah 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 is like the right level of detail, but just expanding that to other platforms and
Hmm.
then also like filling it out a little bit on the existing platforms. Like I think like on the existing platforms, which to be clear is like X, Threads, and Mastodon, I think that like getting us engaging with people on those platforms is probably enough for those platforms right now, in addition to like what we're already doing, in my personal opinion. I don't think there's like too much more that we want to do on those platforms. Um, and I think like with the Broom Radio official accounts retweeting what we're doing on our personal media accounts, there's probably enough content there. But then yeah, like Instagram's a different thing, TikTok's a different thing. Even like YouTube Shorts, I think are like really useful.
Mm.
That's like a different thing. So like building out like at this level of detail across those different platforms, I think would be pretty useful. Anna and I were considering, the Hotter says, Anna and I were considering that as the next big lift in the social media strategy. Are you talking about TikTok and Instagram and Soundbite?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, there's.
It'll be interesting. Go on.
Sorry, me and Lexi were talking, I don't know, a month ago probably about creating sound bites, and like I could see this as like it I could see this as something that would be like really fun for me, like finding these quotes that, from containers, and then like building a really cool like visual collage of things, and like having the quote tweet in there, and it be like really like visually pleasing. But I also don't have time right now to do that.
Right.
It's a huge lift. So, but I just had a vision of that, and I think maybe life will free up where that could be something I could do. But I just wanted to mention that because I think it would be.
I could probably honestly, if you taught me how to do it, Pod, I could probably do it.
Yeah, now that I could, that kind of like, because that's like a 1-time, or 2-time, or 3-time type. So yeah, we can. Yeah, that.
Could you?
I've also made reels before. Like I've done sound clips. So I kind of know. Well, I've done it with video. I've never done it with audio before.
Yeah, there's tools that let, like, outside of the app, that let you do it, that are, in my opinion, a lot more powerful and easy to use. But
Whoa.
like I've told you guys about like Annie's stuff before. She's got
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, 30,000-40,000 followers, and does like 3 reels a day. And so like kind of watching what she does has put some ideas into my head, and then the utilities themselves. Yeah. It wouldn't be hard. I would say probably like for like a 20-30 second clip, you're probably looking at like 20, 25, 30 minutes of work once it's like a refined process. Like if you're really making it pop visually, and like really putting in some effort into that art assets and things.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I made some notes in that task, and I might create some new tasks just to break out some of the things we talked about. It sounds like, y'all already have some thoughts about like soundbite type stuff. So maybe I'll create a task and assign it to like one of y'all. But yeah. Does anybody else have anything to say about social media strategy? Just imagining any of us doing TikTok dances over some juicy quotes. Yeah, I was kind of thinking about how, like, for our containers, right now we're not doing video, and you can't really record video from Discord that easily. Like, you kind of have to do a screen recording, so like it wouldn't be as easy as, like, say it is right now with Craig. And in my experience, doing a screen recording on my computer is not very good. Like, it doesn't work very well. But yeah, like most reels have people like talking. So like maybe that's something we want to consider. But I could also imagine like just having the audio and then sort of like using OpenAI or something to generate some like video which goes with the audio as well, And maybe we could kind of mix it up too.
There's a ton of real templates where you can use like all these existing videos that could be relevant. Didn't we do that with Adam's archetypical hour? No, that was, yeah. You didn't ever see that, Adam. I'll have to show it to you sometime. Me and Lexi made something as like a mock. It looked pretty cool.
Yeah. Channeling movement and then having like audio sound clips from the containers would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I've been kind of thinking about how the Broom podcast is like faceless, and it's a really interesting dynamic, I think. Because
What is this? I've had dreams of it. Go on, sorry.
which part, Hoda? Oh, nice.
Mm,
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of people rely on their face to promote their content.
yeah, that's pretty interesting. Um, yeah, I'm gonna say we can talk about this like outside of the meeting because it just seems like a really like a really rich conversation. But please disagree. I just want to like try and get through some more stuff on the board because we have a lot. Ni 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 kara samandoro shitakara panamasetere
I feel like you can
kara.
move on. We can move on.
Okay, cool. So I'm moving to the work in progress column. The first thing is assigned to me. It's fiscal cooperation. I guess like this is work in progress for me. I'm not actually like putting anything to text yet, but what I've been thinking about is just sort of like, yeah, what would it look like maybe for us to like start attending meetings and then just like nominate like how much we kind of want to put in for like how much work we've done in the past week as part of our temperature check. And then maybe recording that in the spreadsheet that Podrock put together for the expenses that we are incurring, to use like a technical word, as tenders of the broom. And like, yeah, without even knowing how that's going to be used yet, like how much, like what's the best way of doing that? But that's kind of like all I've been doing on this so far. And I'm kind of like testing my body to see if it makes sense to keep this in work in progress. And I feel like I'm getting a yes. But yeah, I know we've kind of talked about this before, so we don't have to dwell on it. But just shout out if there's anything you want to say. Create a container called Please Disagree. I'm just gonna say that like Lexi created like a spreadsheet where we can nominate times for when that might happen. I haven't looked at it yet, but I plan to look at it in the next couple of days. Does anybody have anything to say? Julie says I need to fill it out. Yeah, Lexi says it's a Google form. I keep forgetting that. That's gonna be interesting. um, yeah, I think people just need to fill it out. I mean, as far as like a time goes, I feel like when I look at the schedule, like the broom calendar for everybody, it's like there's kind of like some days that we tend to have things, right? So like the tending call is a day where we tend to have things at this. Like I'd say like from Monday to Friday, there are just like some time slots that seem to work for everybody, which is sort of like, when is the Shade Away? When is field tuning? When is roundup? When is why am I like this? On Tuesdays, we don't have anything in that time slot. So like that would be maybe a good one. But then there's also like spa, and then there's like the tending call, and that's on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So theoretically, like the Monday and the Wednesday and the Friday time slot, which is currently taken up by tending and spa, might be okay for people. Does that make sense? Like those would be the most obvious time slots for me. And then if we figure out the frequency with which we want to do Please Disagree, then that makes it easy. But I haven't looked at the form yet, but that's just kind of like how I'm thinking about approaching this. It's like we just, one of the advantages of being spread out across different time zones is that there aren't that many time zones which work for all of us. Time slots, I should say. So then there's less to choose from. Yeah, what it's saying, the days we have the least events scheduled. Yeah, that makes sense to me too. And then, like, I kind of like having a weekend. Like, I haven't been able to make it to Archetypal Hour because it's at 4:30 in the morning, but that's not because it's on the weekend. Anna says, I feel like Please Disagree as a monthly container could be cool. That feels pretty right to me as well, because then we can actually like prepare for it in a way which meets Adam's production value standards. Adam, I don't know why you would spell please like that. It's just weird. Wait, is that Please Disagree and Why Are We Like? Yeah, those are two different containers. And I'm not sure that we should call it Why Are You Like This, because it's very similar to like Why Am I Like This, and maybe it's a bit too similar, but you know, we're just calling it that for now. And yeah, maybe they could be on a similar time slot. Yeah, why not? Like maybe like they're monthly and they're 2 weeks apart or something. Yeah. For once we're on the same wavelength. Just kidding. Monthly, yeah. Part of me is like, well, a month is like such a long time, but I'm also like, you know, I don't have a bunch of excess capacity for like new containers. Ooh, mystical red table talk. That's kind of nice. I don't know why, but it feels good. What the fuck? Where am I? What are we talking about? Okay. This is fine. I'm riffing on Willow Smith's mom's show. What the hell? I didn't even know this was a thing. That sounds cool. So that's Jada.
Jada Pinkett Smith, Red
Jada
Table
Pinkett
Talk.
How sad that she's now just Willow Smith's mom.
I know, I thought that was funny though when I said that.
Demoted.
Smith's mom.
What's the entanglement, man? What am I missing out on here?
She had like a Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith had that whole red tape. Come on, Nobu.
I have no idea what y'all are talking about.
The whole entangle. Yeah.
What? I've never seen this before.
She like divulged about her relationship with Will Smith on her show, The Red Table Talk.
Oh my god. Okay, I like vaguely know that this stuff happened. I'm thinking of a clip I saw earlier of a guy saying my wife's father. My wife's father. And the other person is like, your dad. For real. For real. For real. For real this time. Okay, for real. For real. For real this time. I don't know why I've got earthquake stuck in my head again. Alright, so cool. I think we're good on that. We've got like 13 minutes left. We've gotten through a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of stuff to do. But I'm gonna move on. So there's a task for the overall document / presentation of the branding strategy thing. Yeah, I think like the only thing I want to add on that is that it's kind of cool to see this thing, all this stuff like moving organically. I still want to like position that document as something that I can share with people who either might want to get involved in the broom or maybe like might want to like help to like fund the broom. So I kind of need to meditate on like how to like, yeah, I mean, I think like we're filling out the pieces and like a lot of it's happening outside of that document. So like, how do I want to bring it into that document? And then the other thing I was just thinking is like, you know, as we start to like edge into Instagram stuff, I feel like it kind of like starts to fill in the picture a little bit around like the visual assets. And I know like I'm kind of behind on like mood boarding and like coming up with a strategy for visual assets, but I feel like in some ways I'm kind of comfortable with all of this kind of like moving at the same time. But yeah, that task there is just there to signify the desire to like, yeah, like, you know, make sure it's all cohesive, I would say. But yeah, shout out if there's anything y'all want to hear about that. Text style guide for social media and podcast. Does anybody want to say anything about this? Or do you want to say anything about it?
Yes, I think Lexi earlier last week went through, or maybe it was this weekend at some point, went through and marked resolve on some of the feedback that we were going back and forth with on the document.
Mm.
Kind of wondering, yeah, I'm kind of not clear on where to take it next, honestly.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're in a good rhythm of like posting stuff when it comes to the podcast and social media. I don't
Right.
think like, yeah, I don't know if there's anything to like propose, or I think like what I'm kind of like seeing into the like when I'm like scrying the timeline of all this branding work is like, okay, like we're sort of like coming up with stuff while we're going, and
Right.
then like we're sort of also like mapping out new territory with like, you know, Instagram and stuff. And then like, you know, I've been thinking about the website as well, and it's like I feel like once we have a good idea of like all of the places where we're going to have visual assets and text,
Hmm.
then we can kind of look at what we've like developed organically and through discussion and through like experimentation, and then
Totally.
sort of like try and cobble it together into something a little bit more cohesive if it
Hmm.
feels right, or maybe less cohesive if it
Right.
feels right for it to be less cohesive, but just like something which like is informed by a kind of like I want to say like a bird's eye view.
Hmm.
So
Totally.
yeah, like not only I'd say Anna, to Anna's point, it's like not only is it not holding us up, but I also feel like, um, yeah, I would say in some ways the branding stuff is like being pushed along by the more sort of like organic work which is going into this stuff. But then I think at some point there'd be like a little bit of like a pushing back, not in like a obstructive way, but more like a response from like the branding document as like a cohesive kind of effort. So cool. I'm glad that we're all happy with that. The next task is organize a gathering for the stick and DM people and try to coordinate promotion of the broom.us/safety. Um, yeah, I've been doing a little bit of promotion on the stick. I've been kind of feeling into like reaching out to people, but it's really like slow. Like I kind of like posted a flurry of shit talking about like Anna Cupid and Mariam before this meeting, but I can't say that it feels very coordinated. Does anybody else want to give any updates on this sort of stuff? I did
I've
see
been
some engagement on
oh,
some of the
sorry.
stuff I posted. Um, Bird on a Tree had said that like she got kicked out of like Anna's like follower list or something because she reminded her that she was a human being and not an archangel. And then I don't know, it was something about just mentioning archangels and angels had some people who are like Ramwell, who used to be in the broom, who's still in the broom but just doesn't come in anymore. Mentioned it as well. So I feel like there's a bit of movement there, but it kind of feels again like more organic and less kind of like coordinated.
Yeah, I feel like I've been trying to like motivate myself to write something official for like my own platform, like
Mm,
for my Substack, but I haven't felt the urge to move on it yet. But it's like,
mm,
I don't know, I guess it's something that I have told myself that I want. I mean, it is something that I want to do.
mm. Um, yeah. I guess like something I've been kind of thinking about is, I mean, there's just like a lot of stuff that we're like, I feel personally like I'm across a lot of different things. And like my sister's been in town, so I've been trying to like make space for like weird family shit. But I think like even if she wasn't in town, it's just like there's like a lot of surface area to cover, and I don't want to like stop thinking about the stick, but I guess like the way that I tend to work is like once I've got like I've got like a rhythm of containers right now. And like, you know, the rhythm's kind of coming to a bit of a close with spa because I'm moving out of preparing for weapons training and into standing meditation. And I kind of have to meditate. Like it's officially March as of like an hour ago in Australia. So I have to think about like what I want to do for dojo and whether I want to have a March series. But like once things are set, and I don't have to think about them. I just have to like show up and like channel. It feels pretty good. And like the stick's not like that right now, right? I think promotion's basically like that now. But, you know, I think like if I think about whether it's more important to like do branding work or like do the stick work, I would say like I only really have bandwidth to like do planning stuff for one of those things. Just reading the chat. So, you know, like one thing I've been kind of thinking about is like whether it makes sense for people to like if like one person wants to own anything related to the stick versus like owning like the branding stuff versus like, you know, I think Podrock sort of like owns a lot of like the technical implementation stuff. So that's like some of like the random kind of meditative thoughts I've been having on it. But then yeah, you know, maybe we're all spread out across too many things right now, and it just makes sense to try and like get some like really solid planning stuff in on like branding, and then we can maybe put that aside for a while. And then like maybe we can all or maybe a couple of us can move into like promoting and like really getting the stick like working as a thing.
Yeah.
Sliding meditation. Now standing meditation sounds really boring, but like I mean, I don't know. In a way, I say like preparing for weapons training was kind of like fighting meditation, which to me sounds more exciting than sliding meditation. But different horses for different courses. Fighting meditation. I should try and name that and see what happens. So yeah, I don't really have any concrete thoughts on it right now, but I think like maybe what I'm saying now is just like opening up a little bit of levity when it comes to like where we're at with this stick. Because yeah, it's not like people are like beating our door down trying to be like this person and this person is fucked up, blah blah blah. But I feel like it would probably take quite a push to get to that point. However, I am okay with sort of like opportunistically posting things which regard to like practitioner malfeasance and also like safety stuff. Yeah, in a more organic way, and then maybe perhaps finding out a little bit like how this kind of stuff fits into like all the other promotional work that we're doing as it evolves.
Yeah.
Joy says starting planning more with branding and then pivoting to promo the stick in a more focused way later, like seeding it a bit. Yeah, exactly.
I kind of feel like I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I'm finally kind of getting into a rhythm.
Yeah.
So with like broom work.
Nice.
And like, you know, I guess I like dissolved the circle container.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm not sure like how things are gonna evolve.
I guess something that occurred to me is like maybe if like we onboard like new tenders or like say maybe Tal like gives up on this base thing and decides to work on the broom or something. I'm just like putting that out there as like a random thing that I don't expect to happen. But like you know what I'm saying? Like if we had people who were like Yeah, I can't believe I said that. But like, if we had people that like we respect as practitioners who wanted to like take on like leadership roles within the broom, then that might be like something which gives us more bandwidth to work on these kinds of things. But yeah, something to think about, I would say. But anyway, there is a task called safety as a way that I'm just going to move to completed. Unless like somebody wants to like create some more of the tasks that might relate to safety as a way and put them into the backlog. I feel like that's more or less done, right? And then like we've got this task for like promoting the stick. Okay. So there's a task here for user research. I think we broke that out into like questions for new members, questions for existing members, and then I guess like I would say that this task is sort of like holding space for like speaking to existing members. Julie, is there anything else that we need to do on this? I was saying maybe revisiting the stick closer to the top of April.
We've reached the hour, by the way.
Yeah. I am Yeah, I'm gonna say like let's look into wrapping it up. I might clean up the board a little bit because I feel like there's a lot of like stuff here which we're not actively working on. So I might be reaching out in text to be like, okay, like, shall we move this to the backlog? Are we still working on this? Or maybe I'll just be like, hey, I know you're not working on this, so I'm moving it to the backlog, etc., etc. But yeah, sound good? Is everybody feeling relatively complete? Cool. All right. So I'm going to let it go. I'm going to say thank y'all for listening. I don't know if anybody who's not a tender is going to listen to this. In some ways, I hope some people don't listen to it, but I'm going to dismember myself. And yeah, thanks y'all for joining. And yeah, like I said, I'll probably go through the board and try and clean it up a little bit just so we can go through it more quickly in subsequent meetings, whether they're open or not. Sound good? Cool. All right. Peace.
Yeah, thank you for facilitating.